Now that's more like it. Hey everybody, welcome back to Speedy's Garage. Hopefully you're caught up on last week's video. If not, I'll leave a link to the top so you can go back and see how we got from there to where we are now, what we're gonna pick up today. A lot of people really don't like running wiring. Me personally, I actually kind of enjoy it. It's relaxing for me. It kind of fits in with my OCD nature to be able to really focus on something in a detail and route some wires in a nice, clean way to look like factory. Hopefully this video gives you some ideas of how to route your wiring in a similar project to look nice and clean. One thing I will say is I always create a wiring diagram anytime I build a new circuit in a vehicle. And I keep a copy in the glove box and another copy in the maintenance folder that I keep for all my vehicles. And that's so 5 years from now, if I need to go back and troubleshoot something or reference what I had done, I won't remember exactly what I did. I can quickly look at this and know which wires are which, where they terminate in the car, and know exactly how I set it up. And I do this for all projects like I said. So something to think about if you're doing something similar. Now, let's get back to where we left off. And if you hold your mouth right, it will pop out the other side just like that. While I was in the wire running mood, I ran one more wire from the dome light up to where the map light is. And it was easy. I used the same technique, just a coat hanger, came around this way. Since I'd already had part of the interior taken apart, made it easy. I did have to take the sun visor down, and I just passed it across. I'm gonna leave that because that's a project for another day. When I work on projects like this, I kind of compartmentalize the stages of it. And I've already ran the wire that's gonna come from this light to the console, so now I want to finish up what's gonna run inside the light. We're gonna tap over here, like I said, with the little screw. We're gonna use a ring terminal, but you want it to be serviceable, so the other side, I don't use these much anymore, but they're little quick connects. And in this case, with it being just a single conductor, you want this to be able to be taken out of the vehicle if needed, and it will just unplug. So we're gonna start by connecting the ring terminal on. All right, and there it is, all said and done. We've got the strap in place with the self-tapping screw, and there's our quick connect on the back side. We're gonna put the female end of this in the truck, and this is ready to be reinstalled. And when I said my wiring was gonna be at least as good as factory, I'm gonna show you what I mean. I used to use things like these, just regular old butt connectors. They work, but you're crimping and all of that, and it just doesn't look as professional. And I had a buddy of mine, his name was Richard, and way back when, about 10 years ago, when I was working on the old car, he showed me some stuff, and he was some kind of retired electronic technician or something, and he showed me that you could get little connectors like these. And I've done a lot of projects with stuff like this over the years. I've got some bigger ones over here, might be easier to see, they're white. These are 2-pin, but they're basically like factory connectors, and these things are like 15 cents each, and there's a male side and a female side, and you can see they'll just click together. And these pins come on kind of a chain, and you put these on your wire, and then your wire locks into this housing, and it gives you a nice factory looking connector, and they're pretty cheap, like I said. I'm not gonna go into all the fiddly stuff it takes to make one of these, but this is how they turn out at the end. I've got my loom, I put heat shrink tubing on each end to kind of seal it up. I've got the light wires protected by zip tying them to the bracket. Now, keep in mind, it's red and black and red and black. When you get to the other end, you won't know which is which. So I used a Sharpie, a silver Sharpie, and just put little silver lines on the big LED wires, since they're getting power from two separate sources. I haven't talked much about the little one because this is going to be actually pretty easy. We're just going to draw power. We're going to ground underneath the console, and we're going to draw power from like the dash light so that these will actually dim with the dimmer. That's another thing we're going to do. This one was a little bit more tricky because we had to run that ground wire from the dome light. But that's how it's going to turn out at the end. Nice and professional. And the other end will look the same way in the car. We're going to get to that next. And you will need a set of these. They're special crimpers that are made for these types of pins. If you try to do it with some needle nose or something like that, you're going to have a long day. You definitely want to get some of these special, they're like for weather pack connectors and stuff like that. These are IWISS brand, and it says it's an IWS-1424B. So that's the ones I use, and they work great. I'll leave a link down in the description of the things that I use to put this project together if you decide you want to follow my footsteps. And the Bolt LEDs are Osmium brand. You can get them on Amazon, you can get them direct from Osmium as well. I'll leave a link in the description to these. The big one is 36 lumen, and the small one, this one's 11 millimeter, this one's 8 millimeter. The 8 millimeter one is only 5 lumen, but I'm still going to put a resistor on the smaller one to dim it down a little bit more. Picked up some of those. We're probably going to use like a 2.2 or 3.7, something like that, kilo ohm resistor to dim it down. But those are the LEDs, and I've been testing them in the cars you've seen. They really look great. The pins and connectors came from DigiKey, and they're not the cheapest, but what I like about their website is I could go and type in, and this is called a 4-pin or 4-connector Molex. And I found this, and they show you a nice picture. You can pull up a data sheet and tells you all about it, size, how big it is, color, everything. But it also tells you at the bottom of the page that this is the other connector you need to go with it. And oh, by the way, you also need this pin for this connector and this pin for this connector, and you don't have to go figure all that stuff out on your own. So not the cheapest, but I like that they'll tell you what components work together to make it easy to put something like this in your shopping cart. At this point, it's a little bit easy to get overwhelmed. You've got tools everywhere, the interior's out of the car, there's a lot going on, but just remember to compartmentalize and focus and stay organized, and you'll do just fine. Now that we've got the ground wire ran from the dome light, we've got our LED brackets and wiring harnesses built, the next thing we're going to look at is where to tap into the constant 12 volts for the entry LEDs. And I've taken a look at some diagrams, and there's a yellow and blue wire that seems to feed most of the interior light circuit. I'm going to go and find a place in the truck that's easy to get to, and whenever I do some of this kind of stuff, I try not to impact the factory wiring at all. Like, I don't want to cut anything, I don't want to splice anything. If at some point I ever want to put this truck back to stock, everything just comes out and it's back just like it was. That's the same reason when I put my dash gauges in, I use the Circuit Boss. It tapped into a ignition fuse in the junction box where the fuse panel is, and everything else in the truck is powered from that, so I didn't impact the factory wiring. I'm going to try to do this the exact same way, and I'm going to use a little trick that I learned back when I was doing radar detectors, where they tap into a powered mirror, and that's using these little D sub pins. And this is a Radio Shack part number. You can probably get them anywhere now, DigiKey or somewhere like that, but this part number is 2761429, and my plan is to put a wire on that and then just use this to slide into the back of a factory connector that's getting that yellow, or it's a blue with yellow stripe wire, constant 12 volts. And that way I'm tapping it, but if I ever wanted to get rid of it, I just pull this back out and it's right back to stock. So let's go see what we can find. Here's what I found. There's a little plug right here that connects to the ignition ring cylinder that lights up when you open the door. I checked the blue with yellow stripe wire, ensured it gets constant 12 volts, and then I used blue since the factory wire was blue with yellow stripe. There's the pin, the little sub pin I told you about. I slid that into the back of the connector. I've taped it to keep it secure. Then I ran the little blue wire inside a loom that I had put in from another project I did years ago, and now it runs down and into the console. And what will happen is this will terminate somewhere in here. We'll put some covering on this. It'll terminate somewhere in here, and then the power wires for the door entry LEDs will run out of that terminator box to each of the LEDs under the seat and under the dash. And the same exact thing will happen for the ground wire that we ran from the dome light. This will terminate into a terminator box, and then 4 wires will run from here to each of the LEDs. We've completed our circuit. The best way I could think to do that is with these things called lever nuts, and they were pretty cheap. I think this whole box was like 12 bucks. They've got assortment of sizes, so there's 5 conductor, 3 conductor, 2 conductor, and with the size of the wire that I'm using, I think a 2 conductor will probably work just fine. And the way these work is you flip this orange lever up, you put your wires in, and then you snap it shut, and it basically makes a connection between these 2 ports. And so when I was trying to run one wire in to many wires out, this was the best way I could think to do it and keep everything serviceable. And again, I'll leave a link in the description for all the parts that I'm using in case some of these look like good ideas for your project. Here's where we're at. I got the terminal blocks in place. This one runs back to a bolt under the cup holders. I grounded to the same place that I grounded the cup holder LEDs when I put those in years ago, because this is going to be kind of on the same circuit and I want these dimmable. I normally don't tap into factory wiring, but when I did the cup holder LEDs, the best way I could find to do it was to actually tap the ashtray light. I figured if I ever cause a problem with this, I don't smoke, I don't care about the ashtray light, so I grabbed power from the green wire that runs to the ashtray light. So all I did was tap my ambient power into that same butt connector that I used years ago. I actually cut it off, put a new one on, but they're getting power from that same source. So there's power and ground for ambient, and I marked them A, because 5 years from now, if I'm back in here, I might not remember what these are, even though I did use different wire colors and stuff. And then for the courtesy lighting, marked it C for that. And now we're just ready to run our lines and mount up our LEDs. So I'm not going to fib to you guys and tell you that making these custom harnesses is easy. It's not technically difficult, but it's fiddly, very fiddly, especially since I was using 22 gauge wire. You're definitely going to want a set of these types of crimper. I gave you the part number earlier. That makes it much, much easier because it puts the proper crimp on the little pins. Don't forget your resistor. The bolt LEDs are internally, they already have resistors in them for 12 volts, but I wanted the small one, the ambient light, to be dimmer. If you also want yours to be dimmer than it is, I tested mine in the dark to see how bright I wanted it. I ended up settling on a 3.3 kilo ohm resistor, and that would go on the power wire that goes to that small LED. So in this harness, I put a resistor in here, 3.3 kilo ohm. Take your time, you'll do just fine. Pay attention to your wire colors. I didn't want to run both red and black because when I get them in the car, I won't know which is which, and I'll be fooling around trying to figure out which one to connect up to which power source and ground source. So I switched over. The courtesy light is now blue. This is the one that lights up bright. Blue is power and white is ground for that lamp. So I can tell them apart once they're in the truck. So the hard part hopefully is done. All we gotta do is fish these underneath the carpet and around the dash, and get everything connected up. Before I bolt everything in, I thought we'd better do a quick test run. So I've got the overhead dome light set to door. As you can see, when we open the door, and I went ahead and replaced that dome light with an LED so the color matched. We get all 4 lights on with the door open. There's our courtesy lights with the parking light switch turned on. If I turn off the dome light, footwell lights go out, but we still get our ambient lights. And if I turn the dome light on, the lights are on. Shut the door, they stay on. It's exactly what I wanted. Now we can bolt everything up. And a top tip, before you test, make sure all the doors are actually closed. I had left this back passenger door cracked, and at first I couldn't figure out why the lights were staying on when I thought all the doors were closed. I spent about 5 minutes double checking all the wiring diagram, then I realized there had to be a door open, so I went around and checked them all. Sure enough, that's what it was. Okay kids, we're on the home stretch now. All of the LEDs are mounted up to their brackets and they're in their final home. So now we just gotta really start putting the 4Runner back together. I did mount the driver's side LED to the air conditioning tube like I described. It's pretty thick plastic, but I did go ahead and put a washer on the back side so that there would be a little bit of support and it would spread the force of the mounting bolt out a little bit. So I did do that, put a small hole, mounted it up so it would shine right down on my feet. Passenger side went on that little bracket behind the glove box, easy peasy. One little hole, mounted that up. And then we got the 2 underneath the seats. We used part of the factory chair or seat frame to mount that, and then just tidied up the little cloth piece so that everything was out of the way. Now all that's left is just putting the 4Runner back together. So let's get to it. With that done, now it's time for the payoff. I'm going to dim the lights in the shop just a little bit. We'll start with just opening the doors. Perfect. These are 9,000 Kelvin colored bulbs, but they pretty much match what's in Miss Speedy's ride. I tried to get them to match as close as I could to the LED dome light. That one is 6,000 Kelvin. It's a little bit brighter white, but I think that's going to look great. Let's make sure they go off when I shut the door. Perfect. Make sure they come on when I turn the dome light on. And they do, so that works. Now let's check out ambient. Y'all can probably barely see that on camera, but that's exactly what I was looking for. Just a very, very dull glow. Not distracting and not too bright. And there's ambient in the back seat. The camera's not picking it up. I can see my feet pretty good. So it's a reasonable amount of light, but not bright and distracting. And a lot of people might not worry about this, but I am a bit OCD. And I don't know if you realize it, but the 3rd Gen 4Runner has actually a light in the glove box. Most people don't know it because they tend to burn out rather quickly. And once it burns out, you'd never know it was up here. But it's behind this little deal here. And there's a little switch in the back. You push that, and then the latch will open. And you can try to get that out with needle nose pliers or something. I am actually going to take it over to the workbench. There's some little clips in here. I think if we just release those. There's a wire connector on the back. Just push. Now we can take it to the workbench. And hopefully you can see that. It's a very tiny incandescent bulb, and it's really hard to reach in there and get it. So if you're careful, you can use some tape or something. You can try that, but just don't squeeze it too hard. And you should be able to just ease it out with a pair of needle nose pliers. And this is I believe it's a 2721 bulb, also known as maybe a T5 if you do an LED, or a number 74. They got a lot of different names, but you can see this one's burned. And I can't count the number of times I have replaced this bulb. So I'm actually going with a T5 LED this time. We're going to see if we have better luck. So that is what we went with. Sometimes these LEDs are polarity specific, meaning it matters the direction it goes in. I don't know if these are or not, but when you put it in the housing, I'm going to test it before I actually get everything set on the, back in the car. I'll put it in like that, test it. If it doesn't work, all you do is flip it 180 degrees, put it back in, should be good to go. So let's go check. Okay, so I'm going to test this before we actually plug everything back in. So, like I said, the LED is polarity specific. Put it in one way. If it doesn't work, just turn 180 degrees. And these lights are only activated, or they are activated, when the parking light is enabled. There's no switch around the perimeter or on the door of the glove box to turn it on or off when you open it. When you turn your lights on, this light is on all the time. So that's probably why they burn out so quick, is those little incandescent bulbs. They're just not that durable. So we're going to see how we did. Plug that in. Turn this off. We're going to check, turn the parking lights on, and see if that light illuminates. All right, we got success. So now we're just going to put it back together. And that's just the exact opposite of removal. I'm going to feed the wire back into the glove box housing. Snap it in place. And then just close the door. I'm going to recheck to make sure it still works. Take our flashlight out. There you go. Much brighter than the old incandescent bulb, and should last a lot longer too. Easy peasy. And like I said, I have changed out the interior lights, map light, dome light, with an LED, and I left the cargo area as an incandescent just so you can see the difference, and it is dramatic. I don't know if the camera's going to pick it up that well, but it is a huge difference. And here's just the cargo area with an incandescent versus an LED. Much, much better. So that project took most of a Saturday. I got up pretty early, worked on it most of the day, so keep that in mind if you start something like this. Now, I am very particular about how wires run and about making sure they're not close to anything weird, covering them with loom like you saw. And all of that takes a lot of extra time. Putting those little pins on the wires to build the wiring harnesses, I probably spent an hour and a half doing that, so that consumed quite a bit of time as well. But now I know it's done right. It's at least as good, if not better, than factory, which was the goal. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Please give it a thumbs up if you did. Be sure to check us out on Instagram. It's at Speedy's_garage, as well as our website, www.speedysgarage.net. And hopefully I will see you out there. If only the map lights turned on when I opened the door.